This program is intended for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised.
All right, and we are live. Hello and welcome to the Pop Culture Podcast for Thursday, December 17th, 2020. This is our last episode for 2020. Thank God. It's crazy of a year it is. It seems like it just went by super fast, which I guess is a good thing considering the circumstances. Dave Campfield, welcome to the show. You are our guest this week.
Yeah.
How you doing? Hey, Chris and Molly.
Molly is a huge fan of the Caesar and Otto franchise. She's only
Molly's a liar.
Molly demanded you be on the show tonight. Tom and Molly. Tom is unfortunately sick. Get well, Tom. Hope it's nothing serious, but yeah, they just couldn't stop talking about it, so we had to have you on. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. We got there's gonna be a special screening this Saturday on through FanQuest Nation, where we're going to screen the middle chapter of the Caesar and Otto trilogy, but with a lot of with a lot of different cast members and what have you that are going to be involved. But we'll get to that. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, cool. Absolutely. So there was a lot of interest in Caesar and Otto when Joe Randazzo was on. Why don't you just tell the people at home, give them a rough rundown of what the Caesar and Otto franchise is all about?
When I made my first film, which just got re-released through Wild Eye Releasing under the title of Say You Love the Devil, I wanted to do some dramatic work. The whole reason I got into film was let me just tell some dramatic stories. And I realized with that first movie that there was a lot of other dramatic films out there. Tom Klein, are you hearing nothing? There's somebody that says he's hearing nothing. You guys hear me?
I hear you fine.
Okay. Oh, it must be Tom. So when I made the first film, it seemed like it didn't really make an impression because there was so many other thrillers and horrors out there just on a much bigger budgets. And I think that the smarter way to stand out was to make films that were underrepresented. Films from my childhood that I grew up on, like WPAX would play on weekends, the Abbott and Costello horror movies. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be interesting to do a modern day equivalent, even on a no budget, of comedy horror crossovers? And I had these characters, Caesar and Otto, developed, and I never intended to put them in a horror film, but how ridiculous it would be to put them in low budget slasher films. And when Camp Motion Pictures asked me what my next film was going to be, and I pitched the film that I'm still working on now. This was 10 years ago. And I said, I have this film called Awaken The Reaper, and they said, no, that sounds serious and expensive. What do you have that's cheap and funny? I'm like, well, I made a movie called Caesar and Otto with these two comical characters. What if we put them in a comedy horror slasher film? And I was friendly with Felissa Rose at the time, and still am. She's one of my best friends, and she's known for Sleepaway Camp. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be fun if we put these characters, Caesar and Otto, in a summer camp setting, summer camp slasher film. And that's what I pitched to them on the spot, without giving it any more thought, without even talking to Felissa first, just assuming that she might want to do this. And they said, we love the idea. I wrote the script in 30 days, and within 2 months we were on production. And that experience was so positive for me that we began a whole trilogy of these comedy horror films, taking on different subgenres of horror, because there's summer camp slasher films, there's deadly Santa Claus movies, there are paranormal movies, there are Halloween movies. We kind of take them all on, and you can keep going because there's so many subgenres of horror. So it was a way of doing something different in the realm of no budget comedy horror, because something that the marketplace was missing was what I was hoping to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fortunate to get all these kind of I guess you could say cult horror icon actors in there as well through Felissa. Felissa would always say, how how about Joe Estevez, and how about Brink Stevens, and one Sean Whalen, and like one after the other, Vernon Wells. She would pitch them, and I would say yes to all of them. Of course, and then I'd write roles for them in the process. And her husband was a huge part of it. You know, Darren Miller, her husband, who's I guess best known as the guitarist of CKY, is also an actor, and I was able to cast him in every one of those comedy horror films because he's got a great sense of humor, despite seeming so incredibly serious when you talk to him.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome. How'd you get Lloyd Kaufman as part of it?
That is old Joe Randazzo. Joe Randazzo said, "Hey, how about we get Lloyd Kaufman in there? Like, if you get Lloyd Kaufman, then we'll put him in there." And then Joe, you know, my partner in crime with Deadly Xmas, did that whole thing. You know, he reached out to Trauma because I had tried to reach out to Trauma before. They were not getting back to me, so it took Joe and his friendship with Ashley Wren Collins to get to Lloyd, and then Lloyd was very happy to take part, and we had a great time with him.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, Joe is one of my favorite people. He's like the best friend of indie filmmakers. Yeah,
and to tell you the truth, we shot two things the same day. When we had Lloyd, we shot a cameo from Deadly Xmas where we parody Silent Night, Deadly Night, the grandfather scene in the mental institution, and we also shot a whole other short film with Lloyd the same day because it was all green screen, and so we really had a lot of bang for the buck. And
yeah, if you got him, use him.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we were supposed to get to meet him this year at the film festival that Chris runs.
What's that? All I'm aware of is virtual.
Well, it was virtual, so we got to virtually talk to him, but we didn't get to meet him in person like we were.
Yeah, we run the Milwaukee Twisted Dreams Film Festival, which is a genre film festival, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and we had Lloyd all set to come in. We bought him his plane ticket, and everything was all set. And then guess what happened? Well, the plague happened. That's what I can't say it because we're going to get taken down. So I don't want to use the C word, but
what?
Lloyd was all set to come, and then the plague happened, and all the way up until just shortly before the film festival, Lloyd was still going to come. Lloyd was, there's lockdowns and pandemic spreading, and Lloyd was still going to come. So, and I said, no, we can't have. I don't want to be the guy responsible for killing Lloyd Kaufman. So
I also feel like when you're in an airplane, you're breathing the same air. You're not getting ventilated, and it's probably one of those places anyway. So it was good on you for. Because I know people who have gotten COVID from airplane. Am I not allowed to say that word?
Yeah, you did already. That's all right. No problem.
Facebook's got weird bots out that are like flagging stuff weirdly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hope not.
Whatever.
That's all right. As long as we don't talk about the election, I think we should be fine. That's the hot button topic right now. So.
Yeah, someone last night was sending me a private message about how I have to be prepared and get guns. I'm like, all right, this conversation is over. How else are you doing?
Yeah. Tom's mom probably got it on a plane because she went to Nashville and back and ended up with it. So I feel like that's valid.
If you can avoid planes at the moment, please do, because
I mean, you're in a little tin can breathing the same air. It's it's like a petri dish.
Yeah.
You certainly can't open a window on a plane.
Yeah, that's true.
Flying out of it.
Yeah. I advise against that.
Be fun though, right?
Flying on a plane with COVID. Yeah, it'd be real fun.
No, opening the window on the plane.
Oh yeah.
2020.
I really, really enjoyed the Caesar and Otto films. I was gonna mess with you and say how much I disliked them, but I can't do that because
have you seen them? What do you think? Have you seen all of them? How many?
No. So I saw the Deadly Xmas, and I have not seen the other two. I want to see the other two. Chris actually just sent me the link. That's the 3-pack of them on Amazon all together. So I'll probably be purchasing that.
Tubi has Summer Camp. Summer Camp was that's the first of the comedy horror trilogy. And it was the first, it was sort of getting your feet wet, seeing what worked, what didn't work. And I think it's, of the three of them that are spoofs, It has moments I'm very proud of, but it's the roughest around the edge. And then when we get to summer camp, I mean, when we get to Deadly Xmas, I feel like we're sort of just having the most fun with it that we can, and going to town. And I like one of the beauties of making a Caesar and Otto comedy horror is that it feels like there's no rules. You just have to, they write themselves. They almost write themselves. Like they say, like a chess player feels like the game is always playing them. When I write a Caesar and Otto film, it's almost like writing itself because I know these characters and it just sort of instinctively follows. And all you need is concept. What are we spoofing this time? And then the story just sort of forms like an acorn. When I sit down with my index cards and boom. And, do you know that process about writing? Because to write the most effective the most effective technique that I've found in writing screenplays is when you map out each scene on an index card. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of you're able to see what happens where in relation to the story, and then you're able to adjust accordingly if you feel like, there's a pacing issue. This scene that happens at the end, toward the end probably should happen in the beginning, and you're able to kind of maneuver everything around. And, that was effective in writing these films. But for me, I found that writing something like those went very fast, whereas writing this film that I've been working on now called Awaken The Reaper, that's been years. I've been doing rewrite after rewrite after rewrite, just to make sure that it's, it's in the right place. Because whereas I think the comedies, Caesar grew on me hard after a minute. I love Otto from the get-go. Thanks, Tom. Notice that Caesar's a voice. Caesar's a caricature. Caesar is, he's up at the top. He has this cartoon voice. There's a scene in Paranormal Halloween where we are reading bad reviews of Caesar and Otto movies. They're real reviews.
Nice. That's fun. That's fun.
Antagonistic people. It was almost like Jimmy Kimmel's mean tweets. Because the people... It's amazing how angry people can get if
the
decision that you've made.
Okay. Come on, the movie was obviously intended to be just fun and like.
Yeah, those comments are probably from horror fans because horror fans are like, I love horror fans, but they're the most fickle group of people.
Yeah, and it's certain kinds of. I think horror fans are more open-minded with horror comedies, where like Scream is kind of like a horror comedy, where it's a horror first, and then there's the funny stuff. What I was doing with these last three movies was comedy first, and then horror. Like there's never really a moment where you feel like you're watching a serious horror film. It's not. These movies are meant to be ridiculous, and it's supposed to just poke fun at the absurdity that a lot that horror conventions have. In Paranormal Halloween, when I was breaking down, I like to look at all of the films in a given genre and break it down one by one. Mm-hmm. And I realized the parallels that all of these paranormal movies have. There's usually a little kid who has a supernatural connection to the great beyond, and they're the only ones that could hear it. It could be a little boy, a little girl. Danny in The Shining, the little girl in Amityville, both versions.
Mm-hmm. The kid in Sixth Sense.
Sixth Sense.
Poltergeist.
It's just one after the other. I didn't even realize it was a trope until I started analyzing the movies to parody them. I'm like, that's a trope that no one really seems to talk about. There's a lot of parallels, almost like there's a template of how to make a haunted movie. You have a little kid, boy or girl, like that hears from the great beyond. They doubt the little kid, and then it's interesting to see.
My God, yeah. Now that you mention it, that's so true. Yeah, the Conjuring movies, both of them were like that.
Stranger Things.
Wow, yeah. Stranger Things.
Right. I think it's a cliche that no one realized was a cliche.
I didn't until now. Thanks, Dave.
Now he's never going to look at those movies
again. One of these movies again.
Yeah. I mean, I love the campy, fun horror. And one of my other favorites in this genre, and kind of what this reminded me of, was like the Dale and Tucker versus Evil.
I love that film. That was a better version of they had a budget, because we make ours on 6 to 10K, and they had probably about $500,000 to make theirs at least. I loved it. I loved it. I had
just as much fun, if not more, watching the Caesar and Otto movies.
Tom is saying Do you guys see what Tom is running?
Yeah.
Yep. That's it. Yep.
I didn't get it for the first 5 minutes, but once I got it. So, Tom, are you referring to one of the Caesar and Otto movies or Tucker and Dale?
He's talking about the
Caesar and Dale. Yeah. Tom is our co-host. That's sick. He's off camera right now. So.
He's my other half.
Yeah.
Kitty, did you just say Caesar and Dale? I think you said.
Me? Did I?
Can I do a film with that other guy too? Like we'll do Caesar and Dale.
That would be good.
Did I say Caesar and Dale on accident? Because I had Tucker and Dale in my mind.
Another it's old man hanging with the kid. Usually, yeah, like you think about the Tom. What movie are you referring to? That cliche is not coming quite so much. Are you talking about like?
I think Tom's watching internet movies.
Poltergeist 2, God is in his holy temple.
I don't think many people got that.
Or somebody who's like on death's door and the kid is talking to him. Is that which one do you mean, Tom? All right, Tom, we'll go back to this one.
Yeah.
Tom could be delirious off camera drinking NyQuil too. So
yeah, he's not feeling the best.
Take his comments with a grain of salt here. Sorry, Tom. So did you find it hard to balance horror and comedy? Because I think that's a very delicate balance, to make a good film that can balance horror and comedy.
You'll notice, like for any of the 10 Caesar and Otto purists that there are on this planet who have seen all of the movies multiple times. There's guys on Facebook who hit me up and said that they've seen the movies a number of times, and some have become close friends, like PJ Griffin and Timmy Packer and John Roberts. All these guys have seen the movie multiple times. But I think that people like them might notice that when we did Summer Camp Massacre, it's pretty ridiculous. There's no like even semblance of horror in there, pretty much. Maybe like the opening scene and that's it. And I think each one gets a little bit, like 10%, if that, closer to actual horror. So I direct some of the scenes like you would direct a traditional horror film, and I love horror because I feel like as an artist, as a filmmaker, there are more tools on your palette, and how you use your camera, and how you use the music, and how you use the editing, how you use the sound design. So I love horror filmmaking. I'm really much drawn to it. And when you're doing comedy horror, you have even more tools because you can go more over the top. And in general, there's a fine line between comedy and horror, because you intensify the horror element too much, it becomes funny, and a lot of the Caesar and Otto comedy is just playing it too straight, just going too over the top with an individual moment, and it just becomes funny. So that's the difference between comedy and horror, is how far you take it and how saccharine and cheesy you make the dialogue in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I loved, and I'm curious how you came up with the idea of the guy that just kept getting limbs ripped off and just they're back and they function. And like
yeah, Avi Garg, what happened was in the second movie, in the summer camp movie, Avi was so fun to work with, and he said, "Oh man," and I killed him in that film. And he says, "If you can come back, if I can come back, I would love to come back." He had his arms pulled off in that film, and I bought him back. I'm like, "All right, we had his arms reattached, so maybe we'll cut your leg off this time or whatever." Like, so I just became a running joke. If he wanted to continue being in the movies, I was going to keep torturing him in one way or the other. So it was just a continuing joke. There's a lot of continuing jokes in the series. People jumping out of cars in every film. There's people getting having limbs cut off in every movie. There's just reoccurring jokes that are a lot of fun. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, now I'm really looking forward to watching the other two.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, you're gonna watch it. You're gonna watch completely out of sequence here. Do you move forward and go to Paranormal Halloween, or do you move back and go to Summer Camp Massacre?
What would you suggest?
Well, you gotta. I don't know. If you want the continuity, I would go forward. Just
go back and watch the other one like a prequel.
Right.
Afterwards.
And then you can totally prequel the last one.
Okay.
So do you have any more? Do you have any more Caesar and Otto movies in the works?
I have storylines for at least 2 more, because there's so many more things to spoof within horror.
Yeah.
Obviously, we haven't touched on zombies yet, because there's a lot of zombie spoofs out there anyway. So I wasn't really that drawn to it to begin with. But I want my own take on zombies. I want my own take on aliens. I would love to. Who spoofed the Hellraiser movies? I would love to see Caesar and Otto go to hell. I want to kill them off at the end of the next one and send them to hell, and they have to get out of hell.
That sounds amazing.
So I know where it's going, but it's a small fan base. Your fan base can't be this big to justify years of work. So with the fan base, that's the regular 50 people that I hear from, a lot of work for 50 people. So I'm just hoping that it continues to build, and then I'll tap Paul on the shoulder again and say, hey, it's time to make the new one.
Horror fans are some of the most loyal fans in any movie genre, though. I found that out. Yeah.
Well, the comedy horror fans. So, but the next thing that Paul and I are working on, we're both individually, Paul, who plays Otto, and myself, are working on dramatic films, respectively. So Paul has been rewriting a script called Fortress of Sin for over a decade, and I've been encouraging to make this, and he hasn't really been able to take the next step with it. When I said, we're going to make this movie now. We've got a friend, Christian Voss, in Nebraska, who's a great photographer, who keeps telling us how scenic the whole landscape is. Let's rewrite the script together, you, me, and Chris, and we're going to set it in Nebraska, and it's going to be about this deadbeat dad trying to find his daughter, sort of like Taken meets Silent Hill. And he's going to, search the prairies to find her and find a lot of creepy things along the way. So we rewrote it. They're actively shooting that, and that's Paul's starring debut. And it's going to be, looks like it's going to be released. It's going to be complete, and it's going to be. This is the thing that's been near and dear to him for a very long time. So I'm helping from afar. I'm the editor on that. And yes, Tom, comedy horror do seem to go hand in hand, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So he is going to be in. I am editing this film. I'm co-starring in it, and I never leave my house. I play a character on Skype, but meanwhile, they're doing all the hard work in Nebraska, and I'm just supervising from afar, and as I help them out making this. And then, in the meantime, I'm getting my own dramatic film off the ground, and before I go any further with features, I just have to make this film. Because
did you go to film school? I'm always curious if independent filmmakers went to film school.
I went to Santa Fe, and I left after 1 year. Not because it was terrible, just because it wasn't really. Film school wasn't so much for me. I needed to just sort of be active and work on work on the ground. Came back to New York, and I worked on a lot of other student films. I was involved in. Friends of mine were going to Tisch, NYU, and I worked out. I got my education from just being on the ground.
Yeah.
And so I only went for 1 year. But actually, it turns out the College of Santa Fe, which no longer exists, I think one of their last classes graduated the director of Hereditary, and I have interesting people have come from my school. Like the guy who plays Chiju, damn it, the co-star on Good Life, The Good Place. Was from my school. As I said, the Hereditary director was from my college. Rockman Dunbar, I was in class with him. Like Rockman's in a lot of different movies now. A lot of people came out of it. And my roommate, actually, he's done a lot of writing, and he wrote the unofficial sequel to Jurassic Park. There's a Jurassic traveling stage show. With the traveling.
Oh, yep. I've seen that. Yep.
That was my roommate. One of my roommates from college that I. So,
that's awesome.
That little tiny school of 1,000 students.
That's fun. That's very cool.
Yeah, because it had to be canon, and even my friends said that script had to be approved by Spielberg. The Jurassic World traveling show had to be approved by Spielberg, and they flew him out to his office, and he had to sit there and pitch the story. And Spielberg, just to
Spielberg?
Yeah. Because
that's not that. No pressure there.
Right. I remember watching Jurassic Park movies with my friends in college, and now he's writing the official follow-up. And so even with if it's a brand name attached to Spielberg, you pretty much have to pitch it to Spielberg. I'm not in that boat right now, but I wouldn't mind being.
Yeah, I'd love to just get the chance to pitch something to Spielberg.
I'd probably choke. I don't know if I'd make it.
Yeah, me too.
Hello, Mr. Spielberg.
But,
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we had, you remember Kevin McTurk? Were you on that chat with Kevin McTurk? I had no idea that he worked at Stan Winston Studios. Kevin McTurk is a filmmaker that we have had at Twisted Dreams, and he worked at Stan Winston, and he was a puppeteer on Jurassic Park. He was the puppeteer that the little baby raptor that hatches from the egg. Like, that was him. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, it's funny. You'll hear these little stories about how people unexpectedly working on films bigger. Like I'm friendly with Ethan Wiley, who wrote House and wrote and directed House 2, The Second Story, Children of the Corn 5. But his start was in ILM, and he said that his Ewok feet was the first job he ever had, to create Ewok feet, Return of the Jedi. So
nice.
I have one friend. I'm not going to name this friend, but I have one friend that supposedly knows everybody in the business, and he's like, yeah, one day in 1976, I was sitting in George Lucas's office, and he hands me this script for something called the Star Wars, and I said, George, this will never work. I'm like, I don't believe you.
The first drafts of Star Wars really were barely coherent, and it went from, that's back when your friends were like, because he was friends with all the filmmakers of the time period that went off to be megastars, Brian De Palma and Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola. People presented to them, and then they would just give them honest feedback. And I love having a circle of friends, like Joe Randazzo was in my circle of friends, where we trade scripts and we sort of try to, exchange ideas and give each other honest feedback on what we've done. And it's nice to have that collection of filmmakers, people that love film as much as you do, where you can kind of talk about a script's strengths and weakness. And it's nice to have that. Whereas later on, when Lucas began to do the prequels, you didn't really have that. Like, he was sort of like, I'm established now. I'm a megastar, and he was. And then you sort of just get drunk on power, and your work's not quite as good as it was.
Yeah. We had a 2.5 hour podcast last night of the Star Wars franchise, and what I said about Lucas is a great storyteller. He can tell a damn good story, but he doesn't know how to write dialogue for nothing.
I think I thought all of the prequels got better with each installment, because it's almost like the first one and everyone's like, that was terrible. Like, all right, tries a little better, and then the audience reaction was, that wasn't as bad. Then with Revenge of the Sith, I think he really did well. And I think that you can, not as good as the originals, but I think that's a very impressive piece of filmmaking in terms of what he did. And but I think it's kind of strange that he just didn't let the actors rip. Like in Attack of the Clones, some of that romantic dialogue is hilarious. Not supposed to be.
I don't like sand. It's coarse.
I looked
everything.
I looked at the script for Attack of the Clones. There was something greater at stake. Like, when Anakin was bringing up sand, she brings up glass, and it's supposed to be like this 3-dimensional conversation about like love. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty epic. It doesn't exactly work, but it's interesting. And all you're left, they cut all that other stuff out, and all you're left with is he doesn't like sand.
Yeah.
You want to have a good time? Look up William Shakespeare's Star Wars. It's somebody who adapted all of the Star Wars movies into Shakespearean plays. The sand scene works a lot better.
I've got to look that up. Got to look that up. Yeah. No, Revenge of the Sith. It's my second favorite Star Wars film. Empire, of course, is first, and then I love Revenge of the Sith.
You don't like Jar Jar?
Jar Jar never really bothered me. I mean, he's a goofy character.
I like redemptions. Didn't really care for Jar Jar. Didn't really care much for Rose. I like Rose better than Jar Jar, and I want to see like the Rose and Jar Jar Star Wars spin-off story, where the two of them find their redemption and do really cool things. Well,
Jar Jar, they finished Jar Jar's story in the books, the recent books that came out. I guess Jar Jar grew up. He was like a street performer. He was a juggler, and he like was sad and lonely, and he died alone. And it was, he never got a redemption.
Interesting.
Well, I think it was Max Landis was saying that if he had given the choice, he would make his Star Wars spin-off story would be about Jar Jar. It's pretty bold. Take the least popular character and make a whole movie about him.
Make a holiday movie?
Yeah.
Well, Max Landis is a pretty talented guy. Maybe he could pull it off.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry.
Oh, I
Molly.
was just going to say, you teased a couple things earlier. You teased that you're doing a special with one of the Caesar and Otto movies.
Yeah, this Saturday, an outfit called FanQuest Nation is hosting a virtual screening of Deadly Xmas. This is the VHS edition that Wild Eye put out.
There we go.
And we're going to be doing, there's going to be a number of cast members involved with it. And I think they're still selling tickets. I think it's like, what, $5 or $10 tickets, but Brink Stevens is going to be there. Brink was so kind to be taking part of it. And we're just going to talk about the movie ahead of the screening and then afterward, and any questions that anybody has, I would love to interact.
What's the name of the venue? I'll put the venue in the chat here. What's the name of it? How can people get tickets?
FanQuest Nation.
What is it?
FanQuest Nation.
FanQuest Nation. Okay.
Yeah,
So it's a virtual event, right?
A virtual event with a bunch of us taking part of it.
Okay. That's awesome.
Very cool.
I mean, something to say for the pandemic is it's made us much more creative with having events and doing things virtually, and it's opened up some new things.
Yeah.
I don't want it to stay that way, but it's made people get creative, I think.
Yeah.
Well, what was the story? You guys might know better than I do that somebody made a movie from their respective houses during the pandemic and then rented out theaters. They made that horror film. They rented out theaters and therefore technically became the number one film in the country. And it was like a homemade movie pretty much. And by nature this was a few months back. They made a horror movie, rented out the theaters, bought the tickets. So technically, according to Box Office Mojo, when that film came out, this big home movie pretty much, that number one box office hit in the country.
So they can put that like in there, like
that is something
number one box office hit.
That's inventive.
They can put up. Why I can't think of this film. I can't recall what the title was, but it was kind of a genius thing that they will be able to hit finances up with for the rest of their lives with.
Mm-hmm.
That does sound genius. I didn't even hear about it.
Yeah, maybe after the show I'll track down that title and send it out to you guys.
Okay. Very
Well,
cool.
there you go, Molly. You guys should do that with your podcast. Rent out some theaters and say you're the biggest podcast in the country. Wait, why am I giving you these ideas?
I don't know. You got one too.
Learn my lesson.
So you've got a current project that you're working on too as well. Did you want to get into that at all?
Absolutely. So Awaken the Reaper is my attempt to tell a dramatic horror film. It's going to be night and day. From the character that I play in Caesar and Otto films is almost like a take on Jerry Lewis. And this character that I'm playing, I'm not the lead, I'm the co-star on this, is completely night and day. And what I'm trying to do is tell a horror film that's grounded and down to earth. Because genuinely speaking, horror films, I don't relate to them. And I think a lot of people don't relate to horror films. And that's part of the reason why they have maybe more of a niche appeal. But what are people really afraid of? I know what I'm afraid of. Can you tap into that? And a lot of the things that happen, the story of things that happen in my own life. And so I'm trying to tell a very realistic, grounded horror film that still has a fantastical element, but it is grounded in reality. I think the moments of The Shining that work most powerfully are the parts that feel real. Because if you cannot, The Exorcist is such a brilliant horror film because it feels so relatable. The priest is the best defined character. That The Exorcist is beautiful. Jason Miller's character is the most realistic priest I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah.
In that he struggles with his faith, he struggles with guilt. He doesn't know what he's doing. And yet he's a priest, but he's unconventional. He's working out a lot. He just feels so true to me. The mother feels like a real mother. If a daughter, if there's a young single mother that's taking care of a kid and the kid starts acting erratically, you don't immediately say, "Well, I need an exorcist." You go to the doctor. Mm-hmm. And the story follows this logic, like a real life logic. And that film, I feel, is so powerful because it exists in the universe that we live in. It's universal. And with Awaken the Reaper, I'm trying to do that same thing. Present real characters, not caricatures, that are ciphers for all of us. That someone that, and I'm hoping when people watch the movie, they're either watching themselves and people that they know, or both. Hopefully, my lead character Keith is somebody who aspires to be a great architect. Now, that you might as well fill in the gap for whatever it is that you aspire for. None of us are where we want to be. Everybody aspires for something greater, but feel that we're being held back and are afraid to take that next step. It's all about fear. It's all about trying to overcome the things that are holding you back, which a lot of times are yourself. And when darkness comes, sometimes losing everything is only a new beginning, because once you've lost everything, what else are you afraid to lose? And it's about a character who really goes to the ringer, and I've had a lot of loss in my life, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. And if this story really works and it feels authentic, you forget you're watching a movie and you just get pulled into it, and that's the whole hope of it. And to do it, to create this kind of dreamy atmosphere too. I really liked some of the early work of Ridley Scott, and you have some of the sentimentality of Spielberg in there, and never make it too schmaltzy. You just really try to make this feel like slice of life.
Right.
Amid, and that's sort of my focus is getting the character stuff 100%, and the horror stuff as well, because it's almost like without the other will not work. So this film will be hopefully that perfect balance between characterization and horror. And if that works, then hopefully we'll have something that stands out. Caesarano only works for a very small slice of the audience, and I'm hoping, like you, Molly, and like me, if I was watching the Caesarano film, I would probably really take to it. But
I'm shocked that it's not more of a cult classic. I just want to throw in there that it's not caught on.
It has time. It has time.
But if say Awaken the Reaper does something, then maybe people go back and discover these movies, and say, oh wow, he's got a crazy side too. He's got a wacky, funny side. We'll see. Like one thing tends to lead to the other. So
it sounds like a really deep film. I know some writers get really affected when they're writing something like this. Did you ever just have a need to like step back and say, okay, I need to decompress. This is starting to really affect me.
Well, I mean, it's about real things that have happened. So absolutely, I'm still struggling with people I've lost that are very close to me in my life. About as close as they come. So
yeah,
it's cathartic in that way, and it's sort of a way for you to come to terms with everything. I feel I'll let the movie do the talking. I don't want to talk too much about the things that are biographical, but you don't get through this life without getting punched in the face several times by life.
Yep. Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
With loss, I don't think we ever really get over loss. I think we just learn how to live with loss.
Yeah.
I was fortunate to go some long stretch of time without losing people closest to you. Then it's inevitable. It happens just sometimes much more unexpectedly than others.
Yeah.
And it's also like, I hope that the film, because at the end of the day, what do you fear more than loss of your own life or those that you love? Those are the greatest fears of everything. And what happens? And where do the people go that you love, that have passed? And so that's what I'm really that's what I'm really tackling. That incredible fear of loss and pain and the things that could follow and the unknown.
That sounds really.
And it's why we all have freaking anxiety attacks.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? I think I fear loss more than I fear my own death. I'd be more afraid to lose like my wife than my life.
Name me one person out there who doesn't have anxiety attacks. I have seen or panic attacks. You could see the most confident person in the world, and they're just like, "Hey, how you doing?" And then you talk to them privately, like, "Oh yeah, I have anxiety issues." Everybody's got anxiety issues, so this movie is supposed to like really tackle that, that fear that we all are living with and denying in some cases, hiding.
Yeah, I think sometimes the ones that come off as the most confident are probably behind closed doors the most, anxious people.
You seem pretty confident.
Stressed out. Huh?
You seem pretty confident, Molly. Are you having terrible anxiety?
I come off as confident.
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I'm just saying from experience. I just think. Yeah.
Some people are better at hiding it than others, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think deep down inside, everybody has anxiety. Everybody has panic attacks. I don't know anybody that doesn't.
Yeah, because like when people tell me they're on medication for anxiety, I'm like, who does not have anxiety?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, some people just handle it.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Some people just handle it better than others.
I don't handle it very well.
No. I don't either. But
yeah.
What are you gonna do?
This
got deep. This got deep.
It all down. It did.
Damn you, Molly.
It's not my fault. It's this awesome sounding.
That's why Molly has anxiety, because I blame her for everything.
Yeah, well.
You know what I've been doing? During the pandemic, I started tackling a lot of screenplays that I hadn't had time to do. Now that I was sort of laid off temporarily, I was like, I've got a screenplay called Raven, which is about the Amish that I got a chance to write. I wrote 3 screenplays during the pandemic. And on top of doing the pre-production for the films I'm actively involved with. So I would say that has been the unintended plus of what's happened. So we've all had some level more time to develop some of these things that we really have been passionate about. Well, I hope you guys have.
We don't have enough movies about the Amish, so thank you for making one.
Of course. There's Witness and I don't know, that Lifetime movie. What else is there? I'm plugging in. I'm like running out of juice here. And the concept of that is the Amish are. I'm going to read you the log line. A company just asked for it, so I'm going to read you the log line that I gave them. So, like producers of a couple of films that are pretty big reached out and they said they wanted to they wanted the pitch, and I gave them the pitch, and then they wanted to read it. So the pitch. Say 1 second. Is sorry. Okay. A malicious alien lands amid the Amish country, and now a pacifistic people will have to fight if they're to survive. When your culture
sold.
What?
Sold.
Sold.
I want to see it.
Oh. I mean, just think about that. The Amish are utter pacifists. Well, what if you are actively attacked by something? What do? Do you stand there and let yourself get killed, or do you take a different path? So I thought that was an interesting. I had come across the Amish, and just the idea occurred to me, like, what do they do when really faced with something? Also, we've seen so many alien movies. I was asked to write an alien movie for some Canadian producers, and I said, "What do you got?" And they said, "Well, we're thinking, that there's a spaceship, yeah, okay, and there's an alien on the spaceship, and maybe the guys are military." I'm like, that sounds like a film I've seen 30 times before. Mm-hmm. Aliens, Terror Within, 1, 2, 3, and I said, what you got to do is set this film in a location that's completely foreign to the alien experience. And I said, well, what about the Amish community? Because they're pacifists. How would they handle it? What if the alien looks like one of their own? And that's sort of the build of the acorn that the screenplay emerged from. And then they went off. We had a disagreement, these filmmakers and me. Everybody gets fired, by the way. If you work in the industry, you will get fired at one point. I've been 3-4 times. I got fired from community theater that wasn't paying me
Nice.
Everybody gets fired.
That's a slap
And
in the face.
But no, this is the funny part of this. Like, so I was just out of college and I'm working in a local theatrical production. I'm like, I auditioned against one guy for Picnic. It's this, what is it, a play that takes place in the 50s or 60s. And it's all about controversial topics at the time. So I audition, I give it my best effort, and I come in second. But two guys auditioned. That guy leaves because he's too good for this play. And then like, all right, like this, like my character in Caesar and Otto is so convinced. Like Caesar is so convinced he's the world's greatest actor. No matter what happens, he's the world's greatest actor. Doesn't matter what people say about him. I give this my all, and they fire me. They had to hire somebody else, and they fired me. Right. So my ego goes from up here to within a year of this production. A friend of mine is telling me that he wants to audition for the Actors Studio, the hardest place, the Harvard of acting schools. And he wants me to be his scene partner. I said, Bob, I don't know if I'm really up for this. I just did a play and they fired me. And nobody was there. And I auditioned against nobody. He says, come on, Dave, I need a scene partner. I think you'd be good for the role. You just do this with me. I said, okay, as a favor, Bob, I'm going to do this, okay? But we're not getting it. I'm not going to get in. He says, this is his 5th time doing it. He's due to get in. Fine. Lloyd and Lee, we rehearsed the part. We're playing 2 actors, what a stretch. And the scene begins with us walking in and acting like we're 2 actors fighting about what the scene's about. We go to the Actors Studio, do the scene. You have to give them a self-addressed stamp envelope, because in 2 days' time or whatever, they're going to send you either a pro or a con about your audition. Fine. It comes in the mail after audition. I put that in the drawer because I don't want to see my rejection. I don't need that on my ego.
Mm-hmm.
And then my friend calls me up drunk and says, I just got my 5th rejection. Did you get rejected? And I said, I'm not looking at it. I'm not looking at what they wrote me because I don't want to know if I got rejected or not. They said, do me a favor, open the envelope, tell me what it reads. So I open it up and they say, dear Mr. Campfield, the Actors Studio was extremely impressed with your audition and would like the opportunity to see you at your earliest convenience. So how do I go within 1 year of being so bad that I can't even get past two rehearsals at community theater for an audience of 10 to cracking my audition for the Harvard of acting schools? Explain to me. You know what the answer is? No one knows anything.
Yeah, different audience, different time.
And because I like to think, that I try to be naturalistic, and sometimes it doesn't read. Depending, some people will get you in this life and some people won't. At the end of the day, if you're aspiring for this, just get ready to be rejected. Everyone gets rejected multiple times. I think John Lithgow said he auditioned for a year straight in the city, rejection. And now he's like one of the great actors of all time. Even people in the Actors Studio got rejected multiple times. So,
Molly, I think we might have an echo.
Has all of that been echoing?
No, not you. Me. Do you hear an echo, Molly?
I heard an echo last time I talked as well.
Okay.
Or can you still hear it?
I don't hear an echo now, so whatever it is, it fixes itself.
It went away. Weird. So, yeah, that's just odd. Maybe because you thought you had it in the bag the first time, and so you brought a different attitude to it. I don't know.
I mean, expectation is definitely a big part of it.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you have something I've got to do this, I've got to prove, you can't focus on it. And if you don't care, because I didn't care about the Actors Studio, because I wasn't getting in. So I went into it just sort of because I love film, I love acting, I love all of it. Yeah. So just going into it with that, unbridled passion for it and just relaxing with it was liberating.
Yeah, more relaxed, natural. I'm sure that had a play in it as well. So it's odd.
So in this Awaken the Reaper screenplay, I'm actually playing a failed psychologist who only counsels people online because he never finished his degree. He's in his own mind like the smartest guy out there. But my idea is I've always wanted to play a highly manipulative psychiatrist, and this is my take on that because I think there's something fascinating to that. To have that power to understand the human psyche and to perhaps bring you down in directions that unconsciously that your subject doesn't know, I think is a fascinating concept, and that's sort of at the heart of it.
I just watched a documentary on the Toolbox Killers. And their psychiatrist had an eye patch, and I thought that is the most badass psychiatrist I've ever seen in my life.
Really? I mean, but yeah. I'm assuming like you can't face that that psychiatrist because you're just going to keep looking at the bed.
I know.
When you're counseled by that psychiatrist, you have to be like lie back on your chair.
Sometimes I wonder if people that wear eye patches like really need them or not, or they're just doing it for the look. I don't know. Like I just want to. I want to peek under the eye patch.
No, I wouldn't want to, because if it was real, I wouldn't want to see it.
Well, that's true.
I'll see it.
I'm so many horror films. I'm desensitized by it. Doesn't bother me.
What are your favorite horror movies?
Me? Well, my favorite film of all time is Jaws. Some people consider it a horror film. Yeah. It's a thriller. But horror.
Well, Jaws is pretty much a horror film.
Yeah, it's a thriller. It's
yeah. If you're talking horror, like something that's unmistakably horror, it's Creepshow. I just love Creepshow. The aesthetic, the music, everything. It's an awesome horror film to me.
Yeah, it's so unique. Yeah, so
definitely
so unique.
Yeah, I like that. I like Return of the Living Dead.
I've worked with a couple of cast members from Return of the Living Dead.
Really? That wasn't
very cool.
Just the perfect, awesome, cheesy, like.
Yeah, no, that's a film that really gets the horror and the comedy perfect.
Yeah.
That's just the perfect balance.
And there's that kind of camp level to the acting, but like if you look at the famous character actor in the opening scene talking about how Night of the Living Dead was really not what happened, and it changed the content just enough not to get sued. Like they're talking about the whole movie. There's such a brilliant satire to the whole thing.
Yeah.
At the right level. It's classic. And I'm honored to have worked with Linnea, who was in Return of the Living Dead. She was in Deadly Xmas, and Beverly Randolph, who was in Return of the Living Dead. It was in Paranormal Halloween.
Beverly is one of my favorite people. She's such a sweetheart.
She's a ray of positivity and sunshine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely up there with one of my favorites. It's just a classic.
Yeah. Part 2 was okay, but not as good. It's definitely a different vibe there. But yeah, the first one, one of my favorites.
When you do a sequel, I mean, how do you recapture?
Yeah.
Right.
You see the struggle that after the original trilogy that Star Wars has, but I feel like they've been doing pretty well with Mandalorian in terms of capturing the essence of what people identify as that franchise.
Yeah.
It's hard. Sometimes like you'll see a sequel, it doesn't have any of the feeling. You're like, wow, how's that connected?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's rare that a sequel comes along that you can say, well, that's just as good or if not better than the original. Like Tim Burton's Batman films, I thought, Batman Returns was pretty good. I like that.
But in different ways, what I mean? Like you have in Batman sort of Tim Burton under the thumb of the studio. And Batman Returns, he goes in his own direction, almost a little too far in his own direction. But you have some of the best scenes, and at the end of the day, it sort of just winds up being this kind of wacky, almost incoherent movie. But it has these incredible scenes with Danny DeVito and Christopher Walken. My favorite stuff in that film doesn't even involve Batman.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, with these guys, with the Caesar and Otto movies, it was being that it's so of my own creation. I feel like anybody watching them chronologically would feel a continuity, and hopefully each time out it's being improved. Because that would use the bar is much lower than when you were comparing it to say like The Godfather or Star Wars. The bar with what we're doing.
Would you ever consider taking Caesar and Otto out of the horror tropes and putting them into like a superhero film or like a Star Wars kind of film?
Sounds more expensive.
Green. Just use a green screen. Heck.
I know. I remember seeing a little movie called Artie Saves the Hood, which I think was a very clever, little low-budget sci-fi movie. I wouldn't mind doing that. I just feel like what you're describing will take more time. And I just got to know that there's people out there that support this franchise enough to justify the thousands of man-hours that will take to make happen. You know, at least with Paul's Fortress of Sin and my Awaken the Reaper, it's a different kind of storyline, and maybe it's going to really take root because I want to do something that's going to find a much wider audience.
Yeah.
Then I can go back to this other stuff. You know, like Sam Raimi's not like a big audience, you know, like once he with Evil Dead, and then that led to another franchise that with a bigger audience, and then he was able to go backward. You know, I guess with Army of Darkness, it was sort of like he had done these bigger films. He was able to go a little backward to the franchise that he knew and loved.
Yep,
I love those too.
Robert Rodriguez did that too with Mariachi. His first film was El Mariachi. He went back and he did Desperado.
So I would like that to be the case, but I have no say in the matter. All I can just do is make the films that are in my heart.
Yeah. Do you crowdfund your films? How do you find the budget for your films? I know that's a big problem for a lot of independent filmmakers. They just can't find the budget.
When I made my first film, which just got re-released under the title "Say You Love the Devil," I hit up a lot of local businesses, and I raised money through the businesses, and I also hit up a lot of different people for $100 each, and we raised the budget that way. When it came to Cesar and Otto Summer Camp Massacre, I pretty much just went out of pocket because it was $6,000. And we produced that home movie on $6,000. When we went to the next one, it was myself and Joe Randazzo that produced it. And on the last one, Paranormal Halloween, it was mostly crowdfunded. And that was a great thing. And maybe without the previous films, I wouldn't have been able to crowdfund it. But because of the the little bit of a track record, I think it was easier to attract people.
Yeah.
And now with the new one, it's a holding back. Every time you're going to make a movie, and I don't want to just keep making $6,000 films because you're so handcuffed with what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want more toys in the toolbox to be able to tell your story effectively. I want drone shots. I want Ronin shots. I want tracking shots, sliders, dollies. I want to shoot it on a higher level of high def. I want to be ahead of the curve, not behind it. You know, and we're going to be doing this for a bigger budget this time out. Don't ask me how I'm getting the money.
Rob a bank.
He said
Straight up bank robberies in New York is on the headlines. Oh, I know how. All right. Well, you have one more sale coming at least because Molly's going to buy the DVD. So
all right, Molly. All right.
I'm trying to push it to everyone I know because I really do think that they're fun. And they deserve to have a cult following, and hopefully that happens.
Just for that, I'm going to name a character Molly in my next film.
All right.
Next user Otto, there will be a Molly.
There you go, Molly. That's awesome.
I did think, when I made it, when I made Summer Camp, I'm like, this is fun, and everyone's going to share the fun with me, and that was not exactly what happened. It's like it's usually the fun is infectious. But in this particular case, as Chris pointed out, that some horror fans are very much purists. And if you create something that's essentially not horror, then it's a lot to ask somebody to be open-minded that, like, okay, this is presented as a horror, but it's really just a goofball film.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. You live life, you make the decisions you're most proud of, and make decisions that make sense to you, learn from it, move on, and just do the best that you can, and hopefully get to a point where you will have at least one classic in you, and I'm hoping that will be the film. Not to take anything away from what I've done, but I want the best to be what follows.
Who inspires you? Are there any filmmakers that you look up to? And
of course, plenty of filmmakers. Like I was just watching Almost Famous the other day. And look at how beautiful the filmmaking is in that movie. And he's a writer first. It's Cameron Crowe, I believe that wrote that. Look at the filmmaking in that. Look at how great and vivid those characters are. It's the best performance I've ever seen from Billy Crudup and Kate Hudson, I'm not sure if I've ever seen that lead actor in anything that quite that big, although I think he was in Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Look at how well that the filmmaking is and how well he tells his story, and it's semi-autobiographical. Frances McDormand could have so easily been a caricature, Sarah Palin kind of heightened Christian stereotype, and she brings the humanity to it. And it's an incredible movie. I'm only saying that because I came across it the other day and was reminded by how great the filmmaking is. I'm inspired by great filmmaking, whether it's from Edgar Wright, obviously the big guys, the Spielbergs, and Christopher Nolan. 90% of the time, I'm really blown away by Jason Reitman. I think does incredible work. Mm-hmm. But then again, I love when my brethren in the indie film community do amazing work, like Joe Zarell with his Cadaver Christmas. Did mm-hmm. such great work on that film on budgets like my own, and other filmmakers. Christopher Garetano is a good friend of mine, and he's done amazing work. And now he's hosting mm-hmm. TV programming for Travel Channel and that on the basis of Montauk Chronicles, this movie he made. He inspires me. Everybody, any filmmaker.
I think I've known about him for at least 20 years. I know he used to have what was it? His magazine.
Horror Business was his and like when I talk to him, we've had conversations on the phone for hours, like sometimes days back to back, and we're just talking film and we're talking about the stuff we love. These are the people that inspire me because it shows you that that's their passion. There are filmmakers, mm-hmm. any filmmaker that sort of just looks at it more as a hobby, you're probably not going to bring it to that great level that will really stand out.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Then, some of the stuff is really going to affect people, So that's just a number of the people that inspire me. I absolutely love I, Tonya, the way that film was staged and accomplished. And it's to watch a great movie is the greatest high, that you can have for me as a person. Yep. It takes you into this universe, and it does it with magic. It's the ultimate art form because you're combining all art forms. It's the visual of photographs, of paintings. You combine it with music. You combine it with theater. You combine it with storytelling. It's the amalgam of all arts in one. And that's why from childhood to adulthood, it's the thing that's captured me more than anything else.
Yeah, for me, my favorite working director right now is David Fincher. I just love David Fincher. Absolutely. Zodiac is a masterclass of a film, I think.
Yeah, and there's a guy there's an interesting story that Ben Affleck told about working on Gone Girl, which I absolutely love. Mm-hmm. I think Gone Girl is even a little bit of an inspiration for what I'm doing. He said he swapped out a lens on the camera when Fincher left set for a moment, and when he came back, just to see if Fincher would pick up on the fact that it was a different lens. And Fincher went to look through the eyepiece again and said something doesn't look right. So Fincher could tell even by him swapping the 50 millimeter for a 35 millimeter lens. Mm-hmm. And that's how absolutely intuitive he is.
Yeah, I think guys like Fincher, Zack Snyder, even Michael Bay, I think those guys are true auteurs. I like Zack Snyder too. I know he gets a lot of flack, but
I think that's the flack that he gets because I'm not the biggest Michael Bay fan, but I love The Rock.
Yeah,
I love some of the things that he's done, but he doesn't come to set with organization. Right. Like with Fincher, it's planned out to the T when they get to the set. But someone like Bay, to my understanding, and actors who have worked with him, say that he comes to the set, he doesn't really have it planned out. He figures it out on the fly. And I would say that's the downside of his work. He doesn't have the discipline that some of the other great filmmakers have. Mm-hmm. And I think that their work reflects it. My favorite Spielberg film, maybe it's blasphemy, is Raiders of the Lost Ark. It took 1941, that movie that he made before, to be such a failure for Raiders to be as good as it is. Because he said he came to that set, he was not organized, he went over budget, everything was a mess. When he came to Raiders, it was organized, it was planned, he knew exactly what he wanted, and he got it.
Love that movie.
And so I think discipline is a very powerful tool to have as a filmmaker, rather than just flying blind. Know what you need to tell that story and then build upon it once you're on the set.
What do you think of the Snyder Cut? Do you think that's going to set a precedence?
Depends on how it is. He has the advantage of another version of Justice League. He can look at that version of Justice League and say, well, how am I going to make this better? So it might wind up being the best version of that film because he's seen what someone else did and where it hit and missed. And if people really respond to it, then yes, then I think there'll be more examples of that, of recuts and bringing original directors back. It didn't work so great with The Exorcist, the Paul Schrader cut.
I'm gonna comment that, yeah, that was a mess.
Yeah, it was it was funny, the night and day difference. Paul Schrader, the writer of Taxi Driver, is hired to make an Exorcist film. And then he's replaced by the guy who made Cutthroat Island and Die Hard 2. And you have one version which is so slow burn that'll put you to sleep. And then you have the other version that's like MTV on crack. It's funny to see how the two visions of that film, line up. And I don't think either one of them, really quite work, because I think their disciplines worked against the story that they were telling.
Yeah, I think The Exorcist 3 is one of the most underrated horror films. It's right. That's right up there with the original Exorcist. I thought it was such a well-made film. It's one of my favorite horror films.
The Fabio cameo still strikes me as very good. You remember that? Fabio appeared in Exorcist 3?
Yep.
I haven't seen the third one.
Oh, you got to see it.
It's good. I mean, so I'm not going to say that it's on the same level as one for me, because I just think one is it's just a perfectly told story, but it is effective, and I definitely very much appreciate that third one.
Skip part 2, watch the first one, and watch the third one. That's all you need to see.
I just have such a mixed feeling about films like The Exorcist, and like one of the ones that affected me, I guess the deepest, because to what you were saying about what you aspire for your film to be, it seemed like it could be real. Like it could be feasibly happening to, the next door to, it was The Conjuring.
I really like the Conjuring franchise. I really like it.
The very first one, and I thought it was just, I walked out of the theater with like legit, like the creepy chills and the it really, I guess, hit me on some level.
because there is a humanity in there that's accurately portrayed. Ron Livingston probably really seems like a dad. Like he seems like a young dad, and the elements of that film between the Warrens and what have you. By the way, we spoofed the Warrens in Cesar Romano's Paranormal Halloween. In this case, Warren is played by she's played by Felissa Rose.
Nice.
But there is that authenticity. You're picking up on it. And when I was doing research for Awaken the Reaper, which takes place in part in a rehabilitation program, somebody who has an issue with drugs, and I wrote a draft, and it didn't feel authentic to me. So I went to an NA meeting to get the details and see how people act and see what the little nuances are, in that setting. And I feel like when you make a film and you've researched it well, you find all of those little details that make something feel authentic. And I wouldn't have known. Any of that. I mean, of the fine details, if I hadn't gone and done my research.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna recommend Cesar Romano's Paranormal Halloween to the Warren family. I'm friends with some of their family. I'm gonna tell them they got to watch it.
Oh, I hope so. That would be amazing.
That would be awesome. And hey, William, hope you get better soon.
Yeah, William is in the hospital with the C word.
Yes, William, please get better.
Yeah.
And well, lastly, Sean Whalen is one of those actors that Felissa Rosa put me in touch with, who's done so many movies, from Twister. He was People Under the Stairs. He was the titular person under the stairs, I guess. Mm-hmm. And he does something so funny in Paranormal Halloween. I can't really take credit for it. I had 2 lines in my script, and he says he reminds me a little of Steve Buscemi, who's one of my favorite actors. So it's a become one. Yeah. Says, "Would you mind if I improv a little bit?" He turned these 2 lines into 3 paragraphs off the top of his head.
That's a good actor. That's a sign of a good actor. Yeah, Sean's a good guy. I want to have him on the podcast one of these days. He's one of my favorite like character actors. He played Roach in The People Under the Stairs. Guy in Twister. He's a good actor.
I've got to share that movie with you. You absolutely have to see it to see what he does. Again, what he is saying in his big meltdown scene as Monsignor Winston, not in the script. So,
all right.
That's excellent.
Yeah, very cool.
So the Awaken the Reaper, that's still something that is in the works. Is there somewhere that people can go to follow for?
I have a website.
Or you just
fourthhorizoncinema.com is a website that that has the different films that I've worked on. So there'll be little updates there. I'm sure we will have a Facebook page at one point, but I don't want to prematurely get into that because I've witnessed other films that put up their Facebook page too early, and it's sort of like you peak too soon. Once we start shooting, I want to start getting it up then.
Right.
And we've been doing a lot of test footage. We've been doing all the prep work and auditioning and getting everything in place. So it is actively happening very slowly but surely.
Very cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I guess we better wrap things up. It's been over an hour. Thanks for coming on, Dave.
Thank you for having me.
Any final words? That sounded bad.
Yeah.
Final words? It's been nice knowing you all. I'm sad to be dying.
That's one of our greatest fears.
Other than I am so proud that I have my own action figure.
Okay.
There's a little outfit. What is the name of it? MCWE, MCWT had MCWF does independent film action figures, and he made one of my character in Halloween, Paranormal Halloween.
You've made it when you've got your own action figure.
Yes, I felt so accomplished that I have my own action figure. But final words is just anybody who wants to talk film, hit me up on Facebook. I'm always around to give advice or 2 cents or what have you, and I appreciate people who have found my films over the years, and I'm just going to continue to try to give you my best. And likewise, other fellow filmmakers is like I look forward to seeing your work as well.
Very cool.